Get ready to be jolted out of the ordinary and into a world where conversations are charged with intensity and facts. The Lightning Strike Talk Radio with your host, Mohammed Fahim, broadcasting live from the heart of the city on Chicago's Progressive Talk Radio, WCPT 820 AM. Welcome to a radio show that charges through the airwaves with an electricity like no other. Here's your host, Mohammed Fahim.
Good morning, folks, and welcome to the Lightning Strike. We got a nice, cool day in Chicagoland area over here today, and joining me this morning is Read Bible, Brendan Vaughn, and Chris Hilbert from our team. At the 9 o'clock hour, we'll be joined by Congresswoman Marie Newman with her guest. LaShawn Ford would be joining us on the show today. But if you want to call in, again, the number is 773-774-8585. That is the new number, so please note it down. Let me repeat, 773-774-8585. But I wanted to start off the morning, folks, not with the fake thing that happened at the White House Correspondents Dinner yesterday, okay? We'll talk about that also. But I wanted to start off with a simple question. If the economy is doing so well, why does it feel so bad? Because everywhere you turn, you hear the same message. The economy is strong. The economy is strong. Okay, we got another war going on. Jobs are up. Growth is steady. And yet, talk to people. Talk to your neighbors. Talk to your friends. Talk to your family. Talk to the family sitting at the kitchen table trying to figure out which bill gets paid first. Talk to the young couple who thought they were finally ready to buy a home until they saw the interest rates. Talk to the worker who got a raise last year and somehow feels poorer today. So what's going on? That is something that I wanted to get in this morning on my rant. So are people imagining this? Or is there something deeper happening that the headlines aren't telling you? Here's the truth, folks. The numbers are not lying, okay? But they're not telling the whole story. GDP is up, no doubt about it. That means the economy as a whole is producing more. But GDP is not your paycheck. GDP goes up when corporations make more money. GDP goes up when markets surge. GDP goes up when spending increases. None of that guarantees that your life got easier. You can have a growing economy and a shrinking middle class at the same time. Now, let's talk about wages. Yes, wages have gone up, okay, but so has everything else. Housing, food, utilities, insurance, and not just a little. Enough that people feel it in every single day. This is the part the data doesn't capture well, folks. People aren't saying that they are broke because they're earning less. They're seeing they feel broke because everything costs more. And nowhere is that more obvious than in housing, right? There was a time when owning a home was the next step forward. Now, for many people, it feels like a locked door. Prices went up. In my neighborhood, a simple duplex or a townhome is over $500,000 now. That is crazy. Prices went up, interest rates went up, property taxes keep rising. You can't even stay in your own home after you've paid it off if you are on a limited fixed income because your taxes are going up because the value of the property has gone up. In places like Illinois, that pressure is real and constant. Housing used to build stability, right? Now it creates stress. And then there are the expenses no one talks about, the ones that don't make headlines. Car insurance that quietly jumps. Medical bills that show up when you least expect them. childcare costs that rival a second rent, subscriptions that pile up month after month. It's not one big bill crushing people. It is 20 small ones that never stop coming. So what should we do? What do people do? They adapt. They use credit cards. They stretch payments. They rely on buy now, pay later. And on paper, the economy keeps moving. But underneath, people are borrowing just to stay in place. That is not stability. That's pressure. Now, let's talk about jobs. Yes, jobs are up, but not all jobs are created equal. Most people are working gig jobs now, contract jobs, positions without benefits or long-term security. A job is not the same as a good job, and people feel the difference. Then there's the biggest divide of all. If you own assets, stocks, property, you have probably done well. If you rely on wages, you're feeling squeezed. This economy rewards ownership more than effort, and that is a shift people are starting to recognize. So when someone says the economy is strong and people respond, that's not what I'm experiencing. That's not confusion, folks. That's a disconnect. And it leads to something bigger. It leads to a trust gap. When institutions say one thing and your daily life tells you something else, you stop trusting the message. You start trusting your experience. And right now, millions of Americans are having that same experience, working harder, paying more, and feeling like they're standing still. So here is the question I want to leave with you this morning. If the economy is truly strong, then why does it feel this fragile to so many people? And more importantly, how long can that disconnect last before something gives? This is the Lightning Strike. I'm your host, Muhammad Fahim. Stay with us. We'll continue the conversation. And I want to just come back to what happened at the White House Correspondents Dinner this morning. Look at this. This guy who is allegedly the shooter or one of a shooter, Cole Allen is his name. He's from Torrance, California. He's a Caltech grad, master's degree in engineering, a teacher, an award-winning teacher. And what do you think happened to him? What drove him to come over to the California, from California to the White House Correspondents' Dinner, book a hotel room, and allegedly try to shoot the president? The president was like maybe hundreds of feet away from where this guy was stopped. And God, if you want to join the conversation, folks, very, very interesting things to talk about today. Okay. 773-763-9278. You can call that number or you can text that number, I believe. And you can call 773-774-8585. Let me throw the floor open. Guys, join in. What do you think is happening?
Well, Mohammed, unless anybody else is jumping in, I'll jump in first. This is classic spin when the economy is not working for everybody. It only works for a small segment, but a very wealthy segment of our society. Specifically, we're talking, what comes to mind? The petroleum industry, the war contractors industry. And things are fine for them. I've heard stats this past week. The petroleum industry, they're making something like anywhere between 12 to 16 billion dollars more each day due to this Israel conflict. They're doing just fine. They're all making tons of money. Well, when you put a over exaggerated portion into the overall economy of people or industries that are doing well, it gives a false appearance that everybody's doing well. But it's like you said, Mohammed, people are really struggling for just the daily things like buying food. I've been hearing news reports on the television or on radio. People are using credit cards to buy groceries. Now, that's tragic. We should not have a society in which if you're working, you're not being paid enough to be able to buy groceries. You have to now avail yourself of credit. This is spiraling down into the bottom, and it's got to change. And I've long thought, although I haven't shared it with a whole lot of people over the years, but I foresee on the horizon even a violent revolution coming up if this continues on for another generation or so. You cannot have a society in which 2 or 3% own 90% of the wealth and not expect some kind of ramifications. And they're not just necessarily going to be peaceful protests. I hope they can be that, and the peaceful protests will reform things, but it can very easily go to violence. Malcolm X once said, it's either the ballot or the bullet. And we're doing everything we can to ensure that it's going to be the bullet. And I hope that our privileged, very super wealthy 400,000 people in the country that are multi-millionaires understand that you can't hide behind your gated communities forever. You need to start thinking about your fellow Americans, the ones who help them make that kind of wealth.
Well, let me see what Chris has to say on this. And folks, again, if you are listening in to us and if you want to join the conversation, feel free to call in. This segment is always sponsored by Ray Hanania of hanania.com. We call it What's on Your Mind. So feel free to jump in and chime in. We got some time today. Mike Patino is not joining us. He's under the weather. And Dr. Sheila White is busy with the movie that she is directing. So she will be out this weekend also. Hopefully she can join us starting next weekend. The number to call in is 773-774-8585. Chris, go ahead, please.
Oh, thank you. I agree with both you, Mohammed, and Reed, what you had to say. A couple of years ago, I saw a meme that came across that I think sums it up very well. And that is that the stock market is not the economy. It's a graph of how rich people feel about their investments. And so they're using that as a part of a cover for saying everything's fine, everything's fine. And like you both said, it is fine for the 1%, the uber wealthy, the greedy billionaires. Everything's fine for them. They're constantly raking in the money. The workers, they haven't had to pay any kind of a significant pay increase in decades. They're struggling. Things keep rising. They're working. Everybody seems to be working 2 or 3 jobs now. And that's, like you said, it's not sustainable. And wasn't it JFK that said you can have a peaceful revolution, or you can have a deadly revolution? You can pick one, but if you want a quiet, peaceful one, you got to work with the people. You got to give them a chance to live and to have a life and not be basically serfs or slaves to the wealthy.
Yeah, and it's a constant struggle, Chris. It's a
It is.
constant struggle, okay? Especially for people who are on a fixed income, retirees, okay?
Oh, they have it bad too. Yeah.
I mean, how bad can it be for them? And then they keep on changing the rules for SNAP benefits, okay? If you look at the qualifying uh, financials or whatever to qualify for SNAP benefits, they are so low that somebody who's making a couple, for example, who's making, I believe, like $2,500 or something, and they are staying with a friend or a relative or the children, they are not eligible for SNAP benefits in Illinois, okay? Because it says that, oh, you got $2,500 income. I mean, how far can you stretch those darn things, okay?
Right.
The money is just not going the way that it used to.
No, it's um what is it? Something like all the wages have stayed pretty much even with like 1970s dollars. What you made in 1970 is what you're making today, but everything else has gone up like 200% or something like that. Well, yeah, no, that's the reason nobody can buy anything, and now it's starting to affect the restaurants, right? And people aren't going to restaurants they can't afford, and the restaurants have raised their prices, lowered the quality of their food.
Well,
And
what can they do, Chris? What can they do? I don't
it's
know what's happening in your neck of the woods over there in useless Texas. I'm sorry, Euless, Texas.
That's okay. A lot of people call it useless. It's a
But
little joke.
tomatoes over here in the Chicagoland area, okay, used to be sometimes about about $1 a pound.
Mhm.
You know how much are tomatoes now over here, Reed?
$4.
Oh, I can
Yeah,
imagine they're over a couple of bucks a pound.
no, close to $4
Oh
per
my
pound.
goodness. Oh my goodness. So I only
Okay.
buy my tomatoes like 2 or 3 at a time. So I just, but But Mohammed, when I was a kid growing up in Minneapolis, my family was poor. And a lot of people grew up in poor families, but we had options like if you wanted a cheap meal from a takeout, treat yourself, we would go to places like a famous chain called White Castle. There you could get a burger for, really low. And that seemed to be one of the things that is sort of the brand of White Castle, is that that's where real working class people can go and get a decently priced meal. But I've noticed, even though I shouldn't be going to White Castles anymore at my age, because of for whatever reason, I noticed the prices creeping up and more and more to the point where, hey, well, I might as well just go to a fancy restaurant at these prices. But now what I'm seeing is that White Castles are closing down. They're shutting down.
Yeah, because
So,
they just can't afford to read. I mean, I remember what a slider was like 3 for $1 or something at one
yeah,
time,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, I when we did our second year anniversary program, in Frankfurt, uh, I picked up a couple of boxes of sliders, 2 boxes of sliders, okay?
Mhm.
$84
Yeah. Isn't that ridiculous?
for 2 boxes. I want to bring Brendan in. Brendan, as a young man, what do you think is happening, man? What kind of country are we leaving for you folks?
I think the economy's shifted where it's becoming more and more difficult for regular people to get ahead. And one thing, and I will bring this up just as I know Mike isn't able to join us today, is I think we've seen at least a direct correlation between the decline in union density in the country, so the percentage of American workers who are members of a labor union, and the skyrocketing amount of wealth inequality. So I'd say that's definitely been a factor that's contributed to this is less good union jobs.
And the Republican administrations nationwide have been trying to kill unions
Yeah.
or bring some kind of restrictions on unions. I think that has a lot to do with it, Mike. I'm glad you Brendan, you brought up that point. And this is so crazy, folks. If you are listening to us early Sunday morning and you are wondering, where do I go for breakfast this morning? Read.
You can't go to
White,
White Castle anymore in many
White
places.
Castles are closing. Okay. And I'm just waiting to hear because everything, I mean, if you want a burger, you want tomato slices on it, what can the poor restaurant owner do? Okay. And I was talking with another restaurant owner the other day, part of a franchise, don't want to take names over here. He said the franchise fees are killing them on top of everything else. And most of the franchisees have to buy their stuff from the corporations. Okay, they can't go out into the market and buy some of the lettuce and the tomatoes and all that stuff. I mean, that has to come directly from the corporate office.
Yeah.
So
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, I mean it is crazy. Everything is going to hell in a handbasket, and we have the president sending his son-in-law, that incompetent Jared Kushner, who has been raking in money. He is not an elected representative. He is not an appointed representative. The United States is not paying a salary for him. He's getting his money from the Saudis and the UAE Arabs, and he's sitting at a negotiating table with Steve Witkoff,
Yeah.
okay, a real estate developer. And then we bring in our Secretary of Defense. I'm not going to call it the Department of War, folks. I'm just flipping over to what the heck is happening with the war now. You guys got any comments on what is happening over there? Because one time the president says the war is over. Okay. One time the president says, nope, it's not over. It's not a war. It is an incursion, or whatever incursion that he wants to name it that day. And then he says that, oh, there's a ceasefire, 15 days, 10 days, extending it 5 days. Now it's an indefinite ceasefire. Meanwhile, the Zionists are not even listening to our presidents. They keep on firing at will in Lebanon and other places. And how do we finish this thing? What has the president got us into, folks?
Yeah. It looks like we have somebody that just called in, Steve.
Well, let's bring Steve on. Good morning, Steve. Come on up. Well, let's see if Steve can join us.
Yes, hello.
Hey, good
So
morning.
I'm going to make
How
a
are
few
you?
points. Good morning. And I think this is a really important topic. And I think people need perspective with regard to who we're talking about when we talk about wealth distribution and income in America. I know sometimes people like to think of the 1% as, the Steve Jobs of the world, the Mark Zuckerbergs, the Bezos and the Musks and so forth, the people who are worth $100 billion and so forth. In reality, to be part of the 1% in America as an individual, you need to make about $800,000 a year. Great deal of money. After taxes, many of these people actually work for a living. They have good jobs. After taxes, it's not that much money. You're not on yachts and private airplanes and that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. So we need to keep that in mind. To be in the top 10%, you need to make about $250,000 a year. So again, not any huge amount of money. But it turns out that recent research indicates that those people account for half the spending in America. They're the ones who are buying things that keep the economy going. But for the rest of us, the question is, where do they stand? Where do those people stand? And I think that it's important to recognize that even when you talk about the top 20%, a lot of them are in a position where they're well-educated and they have these aspirational ideas about moving up in the world. So they're the ones that help to prop up the system that supports really that, 1/10 of 1% that are the uber wealthy. So you've got a group of people who are getting by fine. They take vacations, they drive nice cars, they live in nice homes. But, they hope to have a better life. And they're the ones who continue to support people who, quite frankly, are as far removed from them as heaven is from earth. But again, they believe that this is a future for themselves. Now, for the rest of the population, their lives are stagnant. As we've all heard on many occasions, the people in America are one bad event in their lives away from, disaster that they can't cover. A small emergency, a breakdown of the automobile, a health care issue, this sort of thing, one paycheck away from disaster. So the question is, why do people continue to vote against their interests? And some economists believe that it's because Americans really, truly do believe that in the next decade, they will be part of that top 20%, that top 10%, that they have these delusional ideas about how they're going to enter into that realm. And in reality, those numbers just don't bear it out.
Steve, where are you listening to us from?
I'm here in Chicago on the Gold Coast.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much for your comments on that. I think Chris wanted to respond. Chris, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say that, Steve, you're very correct in what you had to say about the distribution, the wealth distribution, as well as how do we get people to start voting for their interest instead of against their interest. And this has gone back all the way at least to the 70s, where people were voting or hoping to be part of the 1%. And it's very few people that can make it.
And here's
don't have an answer for that one, but yeah, you nailed it, Steve. Thank you.
Here's what's bothering me again, folks. Steve, I believe if you say Gold Coast, you are in Cook County, right? Or part of Cook County?
Downtown Chicago, yes.
Okay. What was the voter turnout in the primaries over there? I believe it was like 20% or so.
Well, yes, I mean, depending upon what you're talking about, presidential elections,
No,
the
I'm talking about
congressional turnout.
the recent primaries.
Yes, well, yes, and that takes us down an entirely different path because I, like a lot of other people who study public policy, who contend that in places where you don't have much in the way of contentious races, in other words, it's going to be a Democrat here, it's going to be a Republican there. We have a very small number of seats that are actually something that are a toss-up in any given election nowadays. And so people here in Cook County knew that turning out to vote for X, Y, or Z candidate for Congress, it meant it was going to be a Democrat. That's who's going to be. All of the candidates were considered to be fairly well qualified, certainly the ones who were leaders. And that depresses turnout, unfortunately. The same thing is true in Texas. Texas Republicans in many places don't turn out very much because it's going to be a Republican. I don't know what the answer to that is.
Okay, I think we need to keep on educating people, Steve. That's what we try to do at the Lightning Strike over here. And if you notice, we don't take corporate advertising. We don't have advertisers that we want to focus on over here because then they start dictating what we can talk about and what we can't talk about. Okay, if you could please support the show, you can go to our website, see if you can throw a few bucks our way. It is tlsradio.com. And, we got a subscribers page started now to help with our expenses over here. But it's very important. It's very important that we need to talk to people. We need to talk to our neighbors. Just don't vote for a Democrat if it's not the right person. Be independent, okay? We are on a very progressive talk radio station over here, WCPT, where we don't want to just toe the party line. We want to hold the party accountable also for their actions.
Totally.
And if I might, on that point, you're absolutely correct. I wish we had a broader notion of how we can express ourselves politically, akin to what they have in Western Europe, where coalition governments must be formed. But the reality is, in America, we have a two-party system. There are a few other parties that play at the fringes, but by and large, if you want a progressive candidate, they have to be part of the Democratic establishment. And that's the only choice you have. Now, you can try and vote for somebody like a Jill Stein or whatnot, but where is that going to get you? So, unfortunately, voters are caught between a rock and a hard place.
No, I agree with you. I agree with you, about the Green Party and others. They're not going to go anywhere. We know that, okay? But at least vote for a progressive candidate. Like what happened in the 6th district in the primaries, for example. Sean Casten refuses to talk to the press, refuses to talk to us, refuses to talk to the public. So Joey Rozovich ran against Sean Casten. Wonderful person, young person, great ideas, very well qualified. He managed to get about 30% of the vote, which is pretty decent for a first-time candidate. So we have to keep on pushing those buttons and supporting people like that. Nothing personal against Sean Casten, okay? But he's been there forever. What have you done, Sean? Have you ever supported, for example, ban the bombs? Nope, he does not want to. And we got the same happening with Brad Schneider in the 10th. And now we have a chance. Steve, if you keep on listening in the 9 o'clock hour, you got LaShawn Ford joining us, who won the primary in the 7th district. So let's see.
And on that note, if I might, this last point, there is this ongoing battle within the Democratic Party and then by extension progressives as to this question of how we save the republic, because I think that there is an existential threat going on with regard to MAGA and this president. I'm not sure that America continues to exist if we don't do something about it. So the debate is, okay, do we run a progressive, as many progressive moderate candidates as possible in order to secure the White House, in order to secure the Senate, in order to secure the House? rather than trying to get perfect candidates as far as progressives are concerned, people who might not necessarily win, because at this point, it's necessary to save the republic more so than it is to get what we want in an ideal world where the perfect becomes the enemy of the good.
Well, there's never going to be a perfect candidate. Okay, let's start off by saying that. But when you have an outside entity like AIPAC coming in and throwing in millions of dollars to get Melissa Conyers-Irvin in the 7th district elected, for example, I'm glad that LaShawn won that race. But when you have influences like this coming in for their own good, not for the good of our country, we need to hold people accountable. Okay,
Well,
even if LaShawn gets elected.
I'm a big critic of AIPAC, but a lot of people seem to misunderstand what they are. They are an American political action committee. They are, the money comes from America. It's made up of Americans. Out there, they have an interest in terms of foreign policy and relationship in terms of another country, but it's not people in Israel who are funding AIPAC.
Oh, I agree with you. I totally agree with you. I totally agree with you.
Including many neocons and Christians fund AIPAC in many ways. So,
yep. No, I agree with you. It's an American-Israeli Political Action Committee, but they should at least register as a foreign agent. Okay, that's something that we can have a nice discussion on. But folks, if you want to join the conversation, if you want to call in, you're tuned in to the Lightning Strike. I'm your host, Mohammed Fahim. We have been on WCPT. This is our 3rd year now. Okay. And the number to call in is 773-774-8585. Steve, is that the number you called in, or did you call in the old number?
The call-in number for CPT.
Yep. I mean, did you use the old number 773-763-9278 or the new number 773?
Yes, the old number. Yes.
Okay, so the old number is still active. Okay, okay, we keep on getting confused, but there is a new number also that you can call in. And Steve, thank you very much for your call. We had a real long conversation, but today we are keeping the lines open so that more people can join us. And we have this lone wolf gunman. Now, they have already determined that it was a lone wolf. Okay, no investigation, no nothing. Kash Patel was just sitting there with his googly eyes, wondering what the hell happened over here today. I'm going to be held accountable. So they are already saying it was a lone wolf gunman, and he had multiple guns on him. Okay, he's been identified as a 31-year-old man from California. I just gave his name in the beginning, and he was supposed to have. God, let me take a look. But they're using that same iconic thing. He had a handgun and a rifle and knives on him. Okay. I mean, just think about the possibility of someone staying in the same hotel. And what is our Secret Service doing? I mean, usually they cover like blocks around any place that the president has got to be, right? Everything is really swept with a fine-tooth comb. How did this slip by our so-called Secret Service people? It shouts to me that it was a setup. I'm so sorry. Okay, every single comment that I'm reading online since this happened, everybody was saying that it was a setup. It was a setup. In fact, Caroline Leavitt just said before this conference was starting, she was giving a statement. She was saying, the president is going to be here and he is going to wait for some shots to be fired. These are her words, and I'm quoting her.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, that's a giveaway right there that it was a totally planned and staged event. Wow.
Wait for some shots to be fired. Can you believe that?
How blatant can you get? This just conjures up Butler, Pennsylvania again.
Yes.
You have a rooftop that's wide open within so many hundreds of feet or yards of where the president's going to stand, or then presidential candidate, and the Secret Service somehow or another misses this one wide open rooftop to cover that.
Well, it's even worse because there were citizens that went to the police and Secret Service agents and said, "We just saw a guy climb up on the roof." We're like, "Okay,"
Yeah.
and they did nothing.
Yeah, it just doesn't pass
Nothing.
the smell test. No.
It does not pass the smell test.
Hey,
Hmm.
Brendan, do you have anything to say on this, man? Okay.
Not really. It's just it was a I spent much of yesterday not on my phone, and it was kind of wild to open up my phone and receive that news and be like, whoa, okay. It was a slow news evening until about 7 or 8 p.m.
So that brings me to the very interesting point. And Steve, thank you so much for joining. And if you could please, we need to leave that line open for other people to call in. And thank you for listening. Thank you for joining. Please continue to listen. And if you want to have any questions for LaShawn Ford, call back in the 9 o'clock hour, and we'd love for you to talk to LaShawn also. Okay. So that brings me to a very interesting point, folks. Brendan just says something that his phone was off,
Yeah.
and then he suddenly got these things on his phone. So who the heck is watching or listening to the legacy media now? Is anyone, especially in the Gen Z generation, anyone watching ABC, CBS, NBC, MSNBC,
I don't
Fox
think so.
News?
I
Well,
think I think they've all gone to independent media on like YouTube and Stack and well, of some of those others I can't remember at the moment. But
Yep.
I stopped watching mainstream media in 2003 when every single one of them lined up in support of George Bush's war for Iraqi oil, and nobody really stood up to him and called it out for what it was. And then when they fired Phil Donahue, that was totally it. You cannot trust any of the mainstream media, even NPR and PBS was behind the war and spouting the Republican Bush line of, oh well, we have to defend democracy, we have to do this. They weren't involved in 9/11. It was the Saudi Arabians. 17 of the 19 were Saudi Arabians, not Iraqis.
yeah. Yeah, a
Well,
bunch of Moroccans.
if you look at what is coming out in the 9/11 report, they have redacted that report so many times also, and it seems it was not even the Saudi Arabians now, Chris.
Oh,
Okay.
really? I haven't seen the latest. Sorry about that.
Nope. I mean, again, that was a false flag by our friendly Zionist friends.
Oh,
Okay.
geez.
That is coming out, real clear now. And again, it's a dystopian world we are living in.
It really is.
And if you call them out, the FCC chairman comes out against Jimmy Kimmel openly. Remember that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
the threats. Yeah, exactly.
Threats. Okay. Now, what's his name? Our Stephen Colbert is about to finish off his innings
Mhm.
because they got after him. And I think the only real news that we are getting is from these comedians at the end of the day.
Yeah. The
Well,
Daily Show.
that's always been the way it is if you go all the way back through history. And I read this, I don't know, like a decade ago. It's always been the comedians, the jesters, the court jesters. They were
Yeah.
the only ones that could really tell the truth and get away with it, right? Everybody else was getting their heads lopped off, either literally or figuratively. But the court jesters, they could make fun of the king or the queen and get away with it, and that's how people got their news was from the court jester, aka the comedians. And there's still some of them, most of them, I don't know how many really, are doing the job that the mainstream media, the legacy media, refuse to do. They're so corporate owned. We're not getting anything but what the corporate owned politicians, candidates, elected officials want us to know. We're not getting the full truth. We're not getting both sides of the story. We need to bring back the fairness doctrine. Everything was a lot more fair and open with facts
It's
when
not
we
going
had
to
to
happen,
barely
Chris.
stop drilling.
It's not going to happen unless the
I
people
know.
wake up. The people wake up, and that's it. That's something. I don't know what they are putting in our water and our food now, so that we don't even question these things. But something has to happen. This cannot continue. You're stretching the rubber band too much now. It is going to snap.
Oh yeah.
And I think for a Caltech grad, is 31 years old, master's degree in in engineering and everything. For him to come all the way to Washington, wanting to make some kind of a point, something must have snapped in his brain for him to do this.
Oh yeah.
Well, I thank our caller Stephen for pointing out some things I thought were very poignant here. He talked about how the working class people still have been laboring under the delusion that they too can aspire to, and through hard work, get into the top 1% or at least the top 10% ranks. And he did point out how to be in the top 10%, it doesn't take all that much wealth, 800,000 a year, whatever. But I think, like you said, Mohammed, it's snapping because people who are just working class people, they're finding themselves paying like over half of their monthly income just in rent alone. And then you have to throw in groceries on top of that. And they might be working 2 or 3 jobs and maybe have to have some daycare help. So I think we're going to start seeing it, that they're going to vote their pocketbooks, their economic interest, and stop engaging in the culture wars or the identity politics now. That they're not going to look for Democrat or Republican. They're going to look for who is saying something about helping me. Help me buy a gallon of milk for my kids, and maybe make it possible for me to put my kids in daycare while I work my 2 or 3 jobs, because they spend a lot more of their income than the super wealthy spend of their incomes on their mansions and their yachts and that sort of thing. And though those wealthy people might be the ones keeping the economy going, they're keeping the economy going for themselves, not for the overwhelming majority of Americans.
Yeah.
Well, Reed, the more I look at it, the more I'm, going out into the grocery stores also. I went to Aldi the other day, okay? And honestly, it broke my heart. I saw an old couple literally looking at every single piece that they wanted on their list and then putting it back.
Yeah.
Putting it back because they just could not afford, and it was so heartbreaking. They had a list, a written list in their hand, and they were looking at the list, and then they would go up to, something and take a look at it, look at the price, put it back. And I was quietly observing them to see what they would have in their cart.
Yeah.
And they walked out with hardly anything in that cart, okay? The cheapest possible things that they could find.
Yeah.
And they have spent their lives for this country.
Yeah.
What are we becoming? What are we becoming? I mean, there's going to be a tomato famine now. Okay. Tomatoes in Aldi were 50 cents per tomato.
And that's Aldi. Yeah.
Yeah, each, not a pound.
Yep.
And this, while we are spending what? In the first 6 days of this war, folks, we spent over $11.3 billion.
$2 billion a day is what I heard, is what the war is
First few
costing.
weeks, roughly 12 to 13 billion in the first 10 to 12 days. And these are figures that are coming out. And after 1 month, we have spent an estimated 30 to 45 billion dollars. And like you said, Chris, the current trajectory is that it's going to be $2 billion per day in ongoing costs.
Yeah. And then the next fiscal year, the Congress will probably vote another $30 billion subsidy for the petroleum industry. And why is that industry getting subsidized with our tax dollars? They're making plenty of money on their own.
And they don't pay corporate taxes. They take money from everybody, and we're not getting anything from it but higher prices. And
Gas and food.
Yeah, there's to change a lot of this, we need to be voting better, like was brought up earlier. And I've been trying to get people when they complain on social media about, well, what do we do? And I said, you start by researching before you vote.
And then
Don't vote, don't in the prime and vote in the primary. Don't
Yep.
vote for who you think can win in November. Vote for who you want in the primary. Vote for who has the better stances that you agree with, like holding the corporations accountable. You
and
know,
then hold
imagine
Chris.
if we could hold Walmart and McDonald's accountable for having their employees on food stamps
Yeah.
and Medicaid.
Well, Chris, it's not just voting, and then we have to hold them accountable. Okay. If they
Yeah.
don't do the work of the people, fire them after 2 years.
Yeah.
So, folks, now we have spent about 80 to 120 billion dollars so far on this war. I have spoken in the past about what else we could have done with that money locally over here. Let's change topics a little bit because this is getting too depressing. Okay. Reed, you wanted to talk about the lessons to be learned about what happened with our friend Viktor Orban.
Yeah.
Okay. And number one, wherever our vice president goes and supports someone, things happen. Okay.
That's for sure. Or in the case of Pakistan and Islamabad, don't happen because they don't have negotiations. So,
well, look at the team that we are fielding. Okay, on our side, we got a son-in-law with no background. Yeah, he has a law
Apple
degree.
baby,
Great.
yeah.
We have a real estate developer, and then we have a vice president who likes couches, and they are going and sitting against three people who have PhDs in political science.
Absolutely. Well,
okay. And we are going in on a transactional basis. They are
absolutely.
looking at it and saying, we are looking at a policy. So that's where the disconnect is right there. We are looking at transactional, they are looking at policy. And that's why these people are not able to talk to each other. So what happened with Viktor Orban, Reed?
Well, to start off with, I had actually intended to talk about the national security that's posed by an FBI director who appears prone to frequent absences because he's drinking himself into alcoholic stupors here at the pool room in Las Vegas.
Reed, allegedly. Remember, we don't want him suing us for $250 million over here, Reed.
I'm sorry, it's all alleged. If you're listening, Cash, it's alleged, I know. Although there's some folks here at the Fontainebleau Hotel at the Poodle Club that might have a different take on this. So instead, though, I thought before it ages too much, I'd talk about what happened in Hungary 2 weeks ago today when 77% of Hungarian voters rebuked their autocratic prime minister, Viktor Orban, and his authoritarian nationalist Fidesz party. Out of the 199 seats in the Hungarian parliament, Orban's opposition, which is a right-of-center party, the Tisza party, they won 136 seats, or 68% of their parliament, which is roughly the equivalent of our Congress. You know, not exactly, but it's roughly the equivalent. This was a resounding defeat for Orban after he had spent 20 years in total as the prime minister of Hungary. So while there are significant differences between Hungary and the United States, there are also substantial parallels to be drawn between Orban's Hungary and Trump's America that we should be noting, particularly in light of the fact that Orban's influence over Trump and Vance, both of whom attempted to get Orban reelected, and his influence over the Heritage Foundation here and his frequent visits to the United States and Hungary of the conservative political action conferences. Orban's been a regular at those. We need to pay attention to what happened in Hungary. You know, the Project 2025 that the Republicans came up with was largely based on Orban's models for Hungary. And now Americans seem to be ready for Trump to meet the similar fate that Orban just met with our upcoming midterm elections. So, but it's not going to happen. We are not going to have similar results if we don't pay attention to what the Hungarians did. So that's why I want to talk about that, because I want to just go over some of the similarities that there are between Trump and Orban so that you kind of get a better picture of what I'm trying to say here as to what we need to do to have a successful midterm election where we can get rid of our autocrat. Here's some of this. I put up a list of these things that I think is going to sound familiar to our listening audience. Both of these men attempted to rig the electoral process by gerrymandering and attempting to not count mail-in ballots. Both of them want to do this or have done this. Both of them came to power railing against immigrants, undocumented or not, as well as the LGBTQ community. Both of them have characterized journalists as purveyors of, quote, fake news, enemies of the state, and have used intimidation tactics, which we just talked about, against media networks while promoting right-wing public-private media monopolies. And there's so much more. You know, despite Russia having invaded Ukraine, both Trump and Orban said that Russia was not the aggressor in this Ukraine-Russian war. How can they think that that's going to be sold? We saw what Russia did. So, and both have been supporters of Putin and antagonistic towards NATO. And my list goes on. They both engaged in culture wars that have polarized our society, attacking institutions such as the independent judiciary, academia, and promoted illiberal democracy. Both administrations have corruptly attempted to cover up sexual abuse of children by numerous powerful figures. Now, is this sounding familiar, folks? You know, both have granted pardons for the corrupt and criminal acts of their supporters. They've both done that. So both have made appeals for returning to an allegedly greater period during which their respective countries supposedly prospered under a dominant privileged class, which can be restored only by them alone. In other words, let's make America great again. Both have, again, used public funds, altered tax policies, given government contracts, and granted administrative settlements to meritless lawsuits to enrich themselves, their families, cronies, and oligarch friends, while the working class continues to sink into economic despair. And I'll just finish up with a couple more things. They both, ironically, have both demonized Hungarian-born George Soros. I think our audience knows George Soros, and because he's a progressive, he's liberal, they're going to demonize him. And they have both made political appointments using loyalty rather than competence as the primary criterion for their selection. So this is the picture I want to paint. America and Hungary are very close. These are the conditions that caused the working masses of Hungary to rise up. They organized and they defeated Viktor Orban. And we Americans must follow the Hungarian goulash recipe, if you will, for restoration of our own liberal democracy. And I've got 5 suggestions here that are all inspired by what I saw in Hungary. The first one is that the opposition to Orban in Hungary, which is the Tisza party, they're right of center, as I mentioned before, political party. They made appeals to voters across the political spectrum. They sought a broad unity. The opposition to Trump in this country must also unite in a broad coalition of voters across the political spectrum. There can be no purity tests on the parts of leftists, progressives, or independents. These groups cannot refuse to unite with moderate conservatives because they might not have agreed with all the values that we might on the left or progressives have. We can't afford to do that. It's just like our caller Steve was talking about. Most people have grown tired of culture wars. Most people no longer view undocumented aliens as the source of their socioeconomic deprivation. They now have a common cause of fighting a stagnant economy, inflation, unemployment, and corruption. Remember, the Hungarians, they came out in record numbers. 77% of their electorate came out.
That's what we need to do. We're coming up on the top of the hour over here, folks.
Okay.
And Reed was just laying out the, I won't say the differences, but the commonalities between what is happening in Hungary and what is happening over here and what should happen over here. I want to finish off the hour with a, I like to write poetry, so I want to finish it off with a small limerick that I've been going around in my brain without pointing to any one particular person. His eyes are bulging after a night indulging. He laughed with his way till he lost his way. now walking a line that is still lurching. So I don't know who this refers to, but
Who are you making reference there? Oh my. Oh
okay.
my.
That's a
So
good one.
I know, I mean, I've been thinking about this. So I wanted to go with his eyes are googly, they wobble quite loosely. Okay.
Oh, I predict, Mohammed, that by the end of next month, uh, Kash Patel will no longer be the FBI directorate. So just remember, you heard it here first on the Lightning Strike WCPT radio. Patel will
Okay.
be gone by the end of next month.
So we can go and say this is the
NBC
tale of
News Radio, I'm Jim
okay,
Roop. The
top of the
ceasefire with
hour,
Iran
folks.
again extended by
Taking a
President
break
Trump. The
for
Truth
the
Social Post, he
NBC
cited
and
the
top of the
seriously
news.
fractured Iranian government. NBC's Monica Alba reports this puts so much about this war up in the air.
It is completely unclear how the White House now is going to try to frame this as being able to then make another deadline that they will have to announce about a decision to see if there's going to be additional military action or not. But I think the fact that the president decided that he couldn't send his negotiators, his vice president, Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, and his son-in-law to Pakistan to have these talks tells you that they were very nervous about potentially going and coming back empty-handed once again.
President Trump says Iran made the request through Pakistan and will hold its attack on that country until such time as the leaders and representatives of Iran can come up with a unified proposal. Virginia voters have approved a redistricting referendum that would allow Democrats to redraw the state's congressional maps. Projections indicate the measure, which could give Democrats a 10-1 advantage in the upcoming midterms, has narrowly passed. Democrats say it's necessary because Republicans are doing the same thing in states like Texas, but Republicans say this is different. Democrats are amending Virginia's constitution. Violent acts in the U.S. are believed to have influenced the gunman who opened fire at the famed Teotihuacan pyramids in Mexico yesterday. A Canadian woman was killed, several American tourists injured in the shooting. In an update today, Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum said the individual showed signs of psychological issues and was influenced by incidents that occurred abroad. An increase in gasoline spending is driving the largest growth in retail sales since January 2023. Retail sales last month jumped 1.7%. Analysts were expecting growth of 1.4%. Jim Roop, NBC News Radio.
This is Chicago's Progressive Talk, 820 AM, WCPT Willow Springs, and online at WCPT820.com, where facts matter.
Okay, folks, continuing our conversation over here on the Lightning Strike. You can call in if you want to join the conversation. The number to call in is 773-774-8585, or you could use the old number, 773-763-9278. So I want to come back to what we were talking about. We all know that the country is facing some pretty hard times. There's no, two words about that. But I wanted to actually write another limerick, starting with it. This is the tale of Mr. Patel, but I'll get into that later.
All right.
Okay. It seems there have been some major firings also recently in the administration.
I've noticed. Yeah.
Okay, and also the Commerce Secretary, she was let go, or she's about to be let go, and she's facing some headwinds over there with her husband being banned from coming into the Commerce Department, and not just her husband, her father has been accused of also. I mean, come on, what's happening? Why did the president surround himself with people like this in his administration? Maybe it's because birds of the same feather flock together.
It just seems to that it's the only thing that matters, and there's no other criteria, is their allegiance to him, his loyalty to him. Competency and anything else does not matter to him. I don't get it. I mean, these people are a bunch of sexual deviants and perverts and predators, and he's filling up, and they're billionaires too, most of them. So that's what he's filling up his cabinet with.
Crazy.
Okay, so there was one official in the, I believe, intelligence department, young lady who was recently accused that she had a social media account where she was looking at sugar daddies to support her lifestyle. Did you guys hear about that?
No.
No, come on.
I mean, I know what happens, but I hadn't read about or heard about it.
No, you will hear about it. I mean, I'm trying to remember the name of that young lady who was looking at who was being accused, not just looking at, uh, for having a sugar daddy. In fact, one of her previous sugar daddies actually filed a complaint against her that he spent $40,000 on her, and he is not happy with what she has been saying about him. Blah blah blah. There's an investigation going on.
Oh my goodness.
Hey,
Oh,
what do you expect? What do you expect
oh man.
from this administration? And the moment we say this, we have a lot of people coming out of the woodwork and saying, "Oh yeah, the Democrats did much worse. The Democrats did much worse." Okay.
Oh, I'm so tired of that. You can't justify one wrong with another equal or greater wrong. It just doesn't make any sense. The moral equation doesn't make sense. And by the way, just to make sure that we don't get into trouble, I might have said it was the Secretary of Commerce who got fired recently because of her sexual misconduct. It's the Secretary of Labor. I don't want to get us in trouble with,
Okay.
with the other guy. He's too busy visiting the
Well, Marie has joined us. Good morning, Marie.
Good morning.
Good morning, Marie.
Marie,
How's everyone?
we have had a great morning so far. We had Steve calling in from the Gold Coast with some pretty interesting messaging for what the heck is happening to our country in general, Marie. Tomatoes at Aldi are 50 cents per piece.
Oof. Yeah, it's funny. We are big Aldi fans in our family, and my husband does the grocery shopping, and he did it late Friday, and he came home and he's like, just
No, Marie, I mean, I was at Aldi and I saw an old couple with a list in their hands, literally going from shelf to shelf, picking up things and putting them back.
yeah, I know it kills me. I see
And
it too. I see that in I don't go to Target anymore, so I go to Costco and some other places, and I see that all the time. It breaks my heart.
and especially for people on fixed incomes, this rubber band has stretched so thin and it's going to break. It's going to break.
Yep.
And I think that's what happened in Washington at this correspondence dinner for this man to come all the way from California to make a point and a protest. Okay.
Yeah.
And they've already come to the conclusion that it was a lone gunman. Okay. Which kind of seems suspicious to me. And I don't know if people noticed that when the president was being hustled out, he fell down. Did you guys notice that?
No.
I did see
I
that.
didn't watch it. I didn't.
Go and check out that video. He literally stumbled and fell down.
Yeah.
Maybe his diaper was full. I don't know. Okay.
Or his ankles have went on him.
Or his
I mean,
ankles went on him.
he's not in good health regardless, and not funny. But yeah, I'm not surprised he stumbled.
So
Well,
we've been talking about especially the economy, Marie, as to what is the perception. It is not the stock market that should determine what the economy is doing. It should be what people are seeing in the market, not on the market.
well,
Yeah.
Marie, I told Mohammed that I have the White Castle test for how the economy is going. After I went to Aldi's and bought my one tomato for 50 cents, I went next door to the White Castle that used to be there so I could get a cheap lunch, a working class man's lunch.
Sure.
And it's closed. So those are the real metrics that we should be using for how
Well,
the economy is going, not how
Yeah.
oil sales are going on the stock market.
So the franchised restaurants that tend to be quick service are getting hit the most because the tariffs have hurt them the worst. And even though they've been lowered in many instances, the unpredictability is really hard. So our labor market is suffering, obviously, and all of it, the chain reaction is, this, as I have said since the first day I campaigned, the stock market is not the economy, and the economy is not the stock market. And CNBC, the Financial Times, Wall Street Journal, none of them can explain why the speculative market is so high right now, and that it's way beyond buying the dip. Like we're way out of that territory now. We're way beyond that. So um, part of it is that, some of the market believes that this literally blooming idiot moron who was bankrupted something like 9 times can run a business, and therefore they're going to have it be a very favorable business environment. Well, the favorable deregulation that they espouse and are excited about only lasts so long, because if you don't have people to buy this stuff, like let's say they're speculating in AI, jobs are taking away AI. Now, I am a believer in that AI is inevitable and we have to deal with it. We have to know it, understand it, and a new industry will bloom. Every time we've had this is my rant, right? Is that every time we've had technology come, whether it's cellular technology, the computer, whatever, a whole new industry blooms out of it. We just don't know what it is yet. So I'm not a Debbie Downer on AI. Let's do it correctly, and let's get our data centers not consuming all of our energy, and have these companies take on the risk, not consumers. That said, and I digress, is that, the stock market is operating in a very overly rose-colored optimism, and I think that will catch up too. Do I think it's going to be as bad as 2008? Maybe not, but like, we have a recession coming. Everybody's got to get ready.
Yep, I totally agree with you, Marie. I just wanted to again go back a little bit to what we discussed last week before your guests come on, Marie,
Yeah.
about the Rifle Act. If you
Yeah.
could please recap what it is about and why we should be concerned about it, and what's happening on May 9th or May 8th
May 8th, there's Lobby Day in
in
Springfield.
Springfield.
And just so you know, folks, anybody can go for any cause whenever there's a lobby day. There's a few designated lobby days in Springfield at our Capitol, but there are also designated lobby days, of which I don't have the dates for, in our national capital too, in DC. So that you're a Google search away from understanding whatever your issue is. It can be speckled pigs is your issue. It doesn't matter what your issue is. You can go and lobby for that, and it's a public event. So May 8th is a public event, and the lobby, the gun reform champions and activists are headed down to Springfield en masse to help people understand that the Rifle Act is a very important piece of legislation. And what that effectively does is that that makes the gun industry responsible for some of the increase in gun deaths, and makes them liable for it, which is true, because they're selling guns to kids. I mean, literally, that's what the gun industry is doing. Their whole goal is to sell multiple guns to adults, and to sell their first guns to kids as early as they're 14 years old, without training, with all the things, right? So let's make them more responsible around this, and support the Rifle Act.
Thank you for that, Marie. Bob from Indiana just texted us that he agrees with what we are saying about people on fixed incomes. Bob, thank you so much for listening to us in Indiana. And please feel free to spread the word about the show. And if you can go to our website, tlsradio.com, for the Lightning Strike Radio. You can also support our show by making a small contribution to keep us going over here. And again, thank you so much for participating. Thank you so much for listening. This is your show, folks. This is your voice, and let us keep it active. I just saw maybe someone else is trying to join the show. I'm trying to figure out if I can find them in our waiting room. But Marie, I think LaShawn Ford is joining us.
Good.
To bring in.
I would thrilled to have I would. There he is.
Mr.
Okay.
Ford.
Good morning. Good
Good
morning.
morning.
Good morning, Rep Ford. Today, joining us, folks, on my segment, Ignore at Your Risk, is a victor in one of the congressional districts, Illinois 7. Rep LaShawn Ford, long time. How long have you served, Rep Ford, in your capacity at the state legislature?
Oh, since 2007, so
Oh my
almost
gosh, has it
20
been?
years.
Oh my goodness. I was going to guess
Congratulations.
2010, but
Yes.
Rep Ford is the new Democratic nominee in Illinois 7, but I'm going to go ahead and call him Congressman-elect, right? Because it's real hard to not win when you're the Democratic nominee in Illinois 7, right? So,
Well, you know the process, and so it's good to be on with you.
so I will.
Welcome back. We have had you on when we did the congressional forums. Thank you
Yeah.
for joining us in the forums also, Rep Ford, and yeah, Congressman-elect. I think that has a nice ring to it, Marie.
There you go. Yeah, all the things. So we're so glad to have you here today. And I want to talk to you, kind of split it into two. I do want to talk to you about your most recent millionaire amendment as a
Oh,
state legislator, rather. And then I want to talk to you a little bit about getting ready for Congress. So this morning, folks, I just want to remind everybody that Rep Ford worked intensely on a very specific amendment called the Millionaire Amendment, which was interesting. And what that would do is levy an additional 3% tax on annual income over 1 million. It did fail to advance in April when it was put forth to the House, but I'm interested to see what the pushback is and then what next steps are in the legislature. So, Rep Ford, please share.
yeah, thank you for that. I think that our goal, working with Governor Pat Quinn and others, we saw that the polls showed that a more than majority of Illinoisans believe that a 3% surcharge on anyone that makes over $1 million was acceptable. And so we actually polled it, and we found that people would vote for it if it made the ballot. It would have the revenue generated from a 3% surcharge would have been around $4.5 billion. And the usage of the revenue would have been for property tax relief and education. Well, you know, Illinois has what you call the evidence-based funding model, where you fund education by districts according to need. The constitutional amendment was written in such a way that we were going to equally distribute the money to districts across the state. And that meant that the 50% of the $4.5 billion that would have been raised would have gone equally across the states at school districts. But many members of the General Assembly felt that it was not fair to do equal distribution when we've changed the way we fund education to evidence-based funding. And so that's where we got some pushback at, that people didn't feel that we could actually administer the funding right. I argued that we could have used the funds for early education. We could have used the fund for higher education where there is no money formula for education funding. And so we couldn't convince people at the final hour to give us the 71 votes that we needed to advance it out of the House over to the Senate. And so now we missed the May 3rd deadline. Therefore, we will not be able to get a constitutional amendment on the ballot for the millionaire surcharge this election.
And then is there any hope of converting that specific piece of legislation into a budget bill or a standard bill that would mirror its effect? Is there any way to do that with our state constitution? I'm less familiar, so tell me.
Yeah, there's no way to do that. The only thing that we could do is change the flat tax, raise the individual flat tax from the current rate. And the Constitution says if you raise the individual rate that individuals pay, you have to raise the rate that businesses pay. We could do that, but we definitely don't want to raise taxes on working families in Illinois. And what we've learned through the research is that there's about 13 million people in the state of Illinois, and the millionaire surcharge would only impact 1% of the 13 million, equal to about 33,000 people.
Yeah.
And so it would have generated and helped strengthen education, provided real property tax relief to families immediately. And so we have to think of a way to be progressive in the state to help our struggling families.
100%. And that was, I actually think that piece of legislation wouldn't be felt very much by those that would be contributing to it, right? The 33,000 that you identified. So that's unfortunate that we weren't able to do that. So just real fast, then we would have to wait till the next cycle where there's a ballot in 28 in order to put it back on, correct?
That's right. And you're absolutely right that people that would be impacted by the surcharge wouldn't feel it because the big ugly bill passed by the Republicans in Congress actually gave the very people big tax breaks. And so the Trump administration and the Republicans in Washington, being very progressive to help the rich, actually gave tax breaks to the people that we actually felt could actually pay a 3% surcharge.
I will point out for all of our listeners the importance of state legislatures in this battle against the Trump administration that really only benefits billionaires. So state legislatures like ours have been effectively doing backstop work to stop the effects of the big ugly bill. So as an example, this would have generated property relief and possibly some relief to schools, which would help because a lot of that money's been taken away at the federal level, folks. So this was kind of a brilliant. So we do have to pay attention to our state laws as well as our federal laws. They do work hand in hand, and sometimes they, in a positive way, they can counteract activities that the federal government has executed. So let's go ahead and talk Congress. Our next person here. So you're going, God willing, everything goes right. I think it will, and you'll be there in January and installed. What do you think? We have a lot to reverse. A lot of bad bills have been put forth, particularly on the budget side of the ledger. What do you think? What are the things we have to do first to reverse all of the bad when we take over the majority again, Rep. Ford? What do you think?
Well, I'm glad you said when we take over, because if we don't win the House and the Senate back, then it's going to be hard to reverse the effects of the big ugly bill that Trump implemented. But immediately we have to make sure that we deal with. And I read earlier that the impact that the cuts to Medicare and Medicaid hasn't had the dramatic impact that we had expected, but it has hit families and working class people and business owners in a way that's unaffordable. Now, that is an attack on working families, an attack on businesses, not the 3% surcharge that Republicans argue. And so I think immediately we have to make sure that we stabilize and improve Medicaid in America, making sure that people have access to health care and that it's affordable. We need to have affordable health care for all in America. And that has to be our priority, because if you don't have your health, I mean, it's hard to get your troops to fight with you. So people have to be healthy, mentally and physically. And then we have to make sure that we provide the relief to working families that Trump has provided to the billionaires.
Yeah.
So reversing those cuts.
Yeah, it's remarkable, right? And what I'll add to your comment around we haven't quite seen the totality of the effects of the cuts for Medicaid and Medicare. We will, because as we all know, in that bill, some of those cuts don't take place until 2027. So you're actually going to start feeling them really badly if in fact we don't reverse them in 2027. So we're already feeling them, and everybody's health insurance as a result of the risk pool has gone up 27% on average. So we have felt it dramatically in some areas, not all of it. So we were already feeling it. Can you imagine if we don't reverse it in 27 when Rep. Ford becomes a congressman and all of the other people are installed? My trust is with them. So
You know, the other part that's very important to recognize that's going to happen, and the ability for students to borrow money in the country. The Trump administration has put limitations on the amount of money that could be borrowed by students and trying to go to college. That's a major problem. It's going to cut people's ability to go to college in America because of the Republicans' laws.
Right. It's good to point out, and right, and we're already in a space where admission rates are down because of the economy and people's. So you can now they have made it even harder because you can't even get a loan now. So
That's right.
it is horrifying on every front. Turning your attention to your district, your new district, which will be Illinois 7, the Congressional District. We all know affordability is the number one issue, but can you tell us in your district a little more granular, like on the affordability side of it? That's a big bucket. It's housing, it's healthcare, it's daily goods, it's gas, all of the things. Is there something that really stands out for you, Rep. Ford, that you're seeing in Illinois 7 right now?
You know, I think the cost of living and the ability for people to have mental and behavioral health support is major. Students not being able to afford college in the district, and I think it's a national issue. I think people all over the country is feeling it. The 7th Congressional District is a microcosm of the nation, and the cost of living is high. The people being kicked off of Medicaid. And so with this redetermination, it's becoming a major, major issue because people are being kicked off of health insurance. So we have to do everything that we can to deal with the new Republicans' policies. And that is redetermination used to be every 12 months. Now they're asking for every 6 months. That means that people are going to be kicked off of not only their health care, but they're going to be kicked off of their SNAP benefits. And so in the district, we're seeing more people in food pantry lines. We see more people homeless in the district, and we see more people stomping out of college. And so it's very challenging for working families.
We're seeing it everywhere. Turning to your position, can you tell us what committees you want to be on in the U.S. House?
You know, there are, and I'm looking forward to talking to you, Congresswoman Newman.
Call me anytime.
Yes, because there are a host of committees that I've been looking at, and you know, I'm going to consult with the Congressman Davis and leadership and see what's best for the 7th Congressional District.
Yeah.
So I definitely look forward to doing that. Of course, you know that we should know that by November so that we can send our letters over to
you've got
the leadership.
tons of time. Yeah,
Yes.
I just was more, it's a curiosity because it was like one of the most exciting things when I was going in. I was like, I couldn't wait to get on small business and transportation because I'm a giant transportation nerd. So, well, excited for you. One thing I want to ask you about, because you and I suffered from a similar ailment in our one of our primaries, the influence of AIPAC and their horrifying. We don't need to go in the gory details of what they did, but AIPAC really put you through the ringer during the election. Tell us a little bit about, how that impacted you and your thoughts on money in politics.
Oh my goodness. I got to tell you, it was amazing that AIPAC was able to spend so much money in that race, and dark money as well, because we had AIPAC spending millions,
right,
5-6 million. Then you had Fair Shake spending 3 million, I guess, and other people spending money to defeat and kill our chances of becoming elected. I think that this cries for real finance campaign reform.
Right.
And so, I mean, you've talked about that for years, Congresswoman Newman, and the fight continues. And I look forward to being an example of how, if we want a fair elections and a strong democracy, that we need campaign finance reform in America.
But I will say in your race, here's, and folks, please listen to this, is that, you know, the voters' choice and the voters' voice prevailed over about $7 million. So as I looked at the numbers, Fair Shake spent $1.5 million to beat up Rep. LaFord, and the folks at AIPAC spent $5 or $6 million, and yet he prevailed, right? So the voters won. And so it can be done, folks. And I just want to reiterate that the voters, if you turn out for the person that you believe in and you vote, voters' voices are heard over those of big money. So keep doing all the things. Is there anything, one thing you want to tell us you might need help with as you go forward from voters' perspective, or anything as you head into the final round here and head towards the general election?
I think that Democrats should definitely be motivated and activated to be strong in their push for progressive ideas and not let up on Congress. And that means that when you elect someone, I think that you should not only elect them, don't leave them, be the strength that they need. And if you didn't vote for a candidate, you have ideas, and I think that you should be strong in your beliefs to make sure that you provide the strength that you want to see in Congress. And I welcome it. My opponents, they could stay my opponents if they want, but they could still use me as their representative to make sure that we get things done, because we need progressive ideas. We've seen Republicans be progressive in a negative way that impacts families and that strengthen businesses and weakens our Main Street economy. And so I say that as Democrats, we should unite and do everything we can to make sure that when we win back the House and hopefully the Senate, that we win big for the people. And we shouldn't hold back. We should swing big, and we could win. I mean, what's the worst that could happen? We could get public option for health care. That would be amazing, right? We can make sure that we eliminate the changes to the farm bill that this administration is doing. We can actually make sure that college is affordable and people could go to college. We could do things that everyone in this nation knows that a free nation, the richest nation in the world, should have. And so that's what we should be swinging for.
I'm going to entrust you with something on behalf of all the voters in Illinois, and I'm going to entrust you with every Monday morning caucus meeting. You tell the speaker and leadership, we need to swing big. That's going to be your rallying cry.
Thank you. All right. So that's the meeting. Every Monday morning is the caucus meeting?
Yeah, when you're in legislative session, and it's a rah-rah, but it also talks about the business of the day and the week. But you need to remind them, swing big. So do that. But it's been a delight talking to you, LaShawn. Thank you so much for all you do. Thank you for your service. And we'll have you back on again probably before you make your journey.
Well, okay, thank you. Thank you all. Have a good day.
After you get elected, don't forget that we're going to hold you accountable.
Oh,
please do. I mean, I want to be held accountable, but here's the one thing about holding someone accountable. Mm-hmm. We all have to be accountable. Absolutely. I need you, you need me, and if we are accountable, then we win.
That's right.
You know, I think that many times people think that the only people that should be accountable are the elected, but we have to be accountable to holding one another accountable, and that's how we win.
Well, so you're going to come back after you get elected, and
yes,
you're going to tell us what is happening in Congress. So no, it's very important, LaShawn. I mean, what is happening today is not acceptable. It is not acceptable, and we have got to fight back against this. I was just telling before you joined that I was in Aldi the other day. One tomato is 50 cents for a tomato, not a pound of tomatoes.
Crazy.
And I saw this old couple with a list in their hand,
Yeah.
going from shelf to shelf, looking at items, putting them back because they could not afford to buy them. So people on fixed income, yeah, I welcome that 3% that you're talking about for tax on the millionaires. We do need that, and we need to put a stop to this unnecessary war funding. $2 billion a day. Just imagine what we could do with that kind of money.
Mohammed, I just want to say, I know you guys are cutting me off, but that simple thing like that tomato, senior citizens love going to get their vegetables and tomatoes, and I'm sure it broke your heart to see that they couldn't afford a tomato. They don't want much. All they want to do is get their tomatoes, get their vegetables, and when it becomes unaffordable, something's wrong.
If Mohammed, I have no
Maria, thanks for
desire.
joining.
I have no desire to cut Representative Ford off. So let me just say this. I think what's powerful about the many things that you said. But one thing is that be the strength behind the elected officials, and I think that is such an important message for constituents, that the voters have the power to impact and push policy, and that this is a partnership. And so when you're holding the public accountable, you're holding the public accountable to hold you accountable. Right. And so I think that's what's powerful. And to come down to this tomato story, it really is about human dignity. At the end of the day, I mean, the fact is that if you cannot even treat people who are sick or treat people who are disadvantaged financially for so many reasons, or the elderly with respect and dignity to just have a decent life where they can be proud of the life that they live based on policies that make them feel small and make their everyday difficult, then what are we actually doing here as voters and as people that are in elected office? So I thank you for your words.
Yeah. And I know we're going to cut, but Maria knows, Congresswoman knows that there's not one piece of legislation that an elected official wants to pass just because they want it that it passes. Legislation that passes is people powered. I mean, just think about how powerful the people are. Obama wanted affordable care, but he wanted public option. He's the president. He couldn't get it.
Yeah.
Obama wanted a lot of things. And as the president of the United States, because he's president, doesn't mean he could get it. And thank goodness we have a system of checks and balances, because Trump wants a lot of stuff that he can't get either, but he's winning in many ways. But the people have the power, and I guarantee you the people could get it. Thanks.
I agree.
Well, one more.
Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
One more thing, if Representative Ford would like to stay on, when you say, but he's winning, right? There's so many things that President Trump wants, but he's winning. So can you define why he's winning? What Obama couldn't get some policies. Why is he winning?
Trump is winning for the billionaires. He's making trillionaires. Elon Musk is going to be a trillionaire. Trump has made billions, and his families and friends are making billions of dollars off of new businesses in this country and making deals across the rural. Trump and his friends have made billions of dollars off of the cryptocurrency. I mean, he's just, the tax breaks, the big ugly bill is a win for the rich, and it is a failure for our nation. Anytime you have a war that's costing billions of dollars a day, taking money away from healthcare, Social Security, education, food security, housing, Trump is winning his philosophy. It's not our philosophy. And so for him, this is the way he wants to see America. We don't want to see America like that. So we're losing as a nation under his presidency. And so we have to take it back.
100%.
Well, I started off the day by talking about the perceived and the reality. The perception that the stock market is, the stock market is so great now. Yeah, but what is happening on the market in the streets? The street market is where people are hurting. And we have had people texting us. Bob was texting in from Indiana, agreeing with my remark about people on fixed income. It is the rubber band is stretched so thin right now, Rep. Ford, it's going to break.
Yeah.
And for this man, for this, what happened at the White House Correspondents Dinner, for this guy to drive in from California to Washington to make a statement, and you know, people are just had it. They've had it, and Reed spoke about what happened in Hungary with Viktor Orban. 20 years in power. Yeah, look at where he is. That's what's going to be happening.
Yeah, this is we talk about mental health and how we're going to open up new mental health facilities. This is bad for all our mental health. So, we're looking at ways that we can improve mental health. But the way we do it is by making sure, Maria, what you talked about, living with dignity, making sure that people have the ability to live with dignity, that our seniors and people have the right to live humanely. That's good for our mental health. And when we can't, it is a direct reflection of our mental health.
Well, I
And
think
that's a problem.
I think the decision we have to make, and you touched upon this, is do we want to be citizens, a community that is implementing policies that's good for the nation or good for individuals? That's what we have to decide, right? And then when we talk about the fact that the nation is made up of individuals, then we define which individuals. And so the individuals that we want to help are the individuals who are individuals who have put contributions into this country, who want to have dignity, who have dreams that can invest into the country, to uplift others and not take. So do we want to build a nation of takers, or do we want to build a nation of healthy, thriving individuals that understand that we're interdependent? And I think that's what it is. An apathetic constituency, and I don't say apathetic just because people don't care, but people also don't see hope. So for you to reiterate, look, we can do this. We need to, like Congressman Marie Newman is saying, rally the crowd and caucus and say swing big. Like, that is hopeful, inspiring messages that we need to hear from elected officials and also remind people. So I appreciate that.
And we will continue to talk about it on the lightning strike. It's so important to have independent media in the country. Rep. Ford, it's all the corporate media.
We have one person. Reed had one before I go.
Yeah, Reed, go ahead.
Yes, Congressman. I'm going to address you as Congressman because it's going to happen, of course. Just changing the district from the state to the federal. But and I can see from what you've said that you are going to be an aggressive champion for the working class people. You're going to be working on reform in Medicaid and healthcare generally, housing. And so I'm glad that you're going to Congress. And I like your idea of the 3% surtax on millionaires that you try to get through Illinois. I believe they passed a 4% one in Massachusetts. So
they did. Yep.
Yeah. So I'm thinking if your successor in the state legislature can kind of follow how they did it in Massachusetts, maybe it can be done in Illinois as well. So, and maybe you can do it on the federal level too.
I'm looking at that. They raised $2 billion in the first year in Massachusetts.
Yeah, and no millionaires moved away from Massachusetts like they were claiming. In fact, they got more now than they did before they passed the law. So
and that's a fact.
So I wouldn't even buy into that argument. But the only thing I wanted to ask you, Congressman, is I'm very disappointed in my two state senators. I live here in Nevada, lived for 25 years in Chicago, and Mohammed was crazy enough to want me to be part of his show. I'm very disappointed in my two state senators because they voted to continue 1,000-pound bombs and bulldozers for Israel to continue its aggression in Gaza and now in southern Lebanon. When you get to Congress, would you fight against that?
Absolutely. That's the only, how could we continue to spend money killing people there and not only sending money there constantly when we've been talking this whole show about the struggles of America?
Yeah.
We just cut it out.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Well, awesome. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you all.
We're going to call you Congressman. Please Take it as a compliment and keep up the good work. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. And make sure you have Congressman Davis on. He's a hero. Thank you.
Yes.
All right.
Have a great day,
Bye-bye.
LaShawn.
You too. Bye-bye.
Okay. Thank you so much, Maria. I mean, that was so refreshing to hear LaShawn like that. I mean, these are the
Really
people that we really want to champion and have them champion for us, at the federal level. Maria, welcome back. What is
jump
happening
right
in your neck of the woods now? Which echo chamber are we going to talk about? I'm sorry, we took a long time with LaShawn Ford, but
Oh,
it's
no
very
apologies.
interesting
No,
conversation.
no apologies. I think we're all in alignment. I think, you're right. I mean, to hear him speak in this manner and speak about these policies, I think so many times, and this is your note on independent media, is that sometimes we're not giving the mic to people, giving them the opportunity to expand on their thoughts. You see these candidates in their political campaigns, and it becomes kind of like their talking points on the campaign. But you just see a candidate. You don't know if they're swinging this way or that way specifically because where the numbers are. And then when you're in this position, you're able to speak so freely. So I think there's such a value to this show and shows like this to be able to uplift those voices. Speaking on the notion of, what Congressman Ford LaFord spoke about is and reaffirmed the human dignity of every American. I was reading that a big push in the Trump administration is to expand death sentences across the country, including firing squads. And it's interesting because, I think that we should be able to see and analyze what these policy positions actually translate into. So when we're talking about individuals getting death sentences, these are individuals that are already convicted as guilty. They're already behind the bars, right? They're already behind bars. They're already incarcerated. Why do you need to include the firing squad? And this is what we really need to connect to when we talk about providing money, not for elders to have tomatoes, but to be able to bomb children. What kind of psychological policy standpoint is this? What kind of message are we trying to send? And more importantly, what do we believe about the role of the administration and any elected official? Is it to degrade and humiliate, or is it to solve policy problems and let elders live with dignity, right? That's the decision we have to make. And it's fascinating to me when there's so many things under attack and people are suffering with college loans, academic loans, that we have a policy branch initiative to look at whether the firing squad is something that's valuable for this country. So something just to think about. And these performative, ceremonial type of procedures are there to send a message and create a social morale. We saw this throughout history, right? We saw these things throughout history, why they're taken. And I think we all have to come to the decision of whether, like I was stating earlier, whether we're going to do things that are good for the nation or good for individuals, and then who these individuals are. And it's individuals that are living with dignity, that contribute to society, that need to continue and die with dignity. And that's the decision we have to make. I don't know if, yeah, go ahead, please.
Maria, your voice sometimes is getting stuck. I think you have some bandwidth issues where you are. So just wanted to point that out, that some words were not coming out clear. Okay.
Let me turn off my camera, but please say a few words while I do that.
That would be good. We are missing Mike Patino today. He picked up some kind of a bug overnight, so he could not join us. And Dr. White is obviously doing her movie thing. She's still finishing up on that. But great discussion. We had Steve calling in from the Gold Coast earlier, Marie, and had a great discussion on what is happening in the country. So a lot of people are listening. A lot of people are communicating with us. Last week's I had put up a post on Facebook on my page about the Build Act and the mayor of Plainfield joining us. Over 1,000 views on that post in a week. So a lot of people are getting concerned. Maria, we can hear you, but I'm not hearing you now. So are you muted?
No, I'm here.
Yeah, please
So,
continue.
well, one thing I was saying is that right now, I don't know if all of you have seen, but there is a kickoff in immigration enforcement in Chicago and Illinois, and the question is, where is Illinois going to stand now, right? So, what example is being made? And I would be interested in hearing your thoughts, Congresswoman, because this has gone back and forth, has gone through the courts as well, of what kind of policies we want to see with ICE agents, with the masks and with the cameras, et cetera, right? And they're doubling down. And so what that doubling down, is that a statement to the courts or is that a statement to the public, right? That would be my question. And proceeding in that regard, I mean, we talked about specifically those immigration judges being fired, right? So is this a big, we're completely going to revamp asylum protocol. We're going to completely revamp enforcement, and we're going to keep judges in check that want to follow the Constitution. I mean, do you see Illinois being used as that example to show that the courts actually have no power?
I think you're exactly right, Maria. I think that there's three things going on. So, and then there's one that's curative that some candidates in the primaries talked about, and I can expand on that. But the three things that they're trying to do are this administration knows that they are in deep, deep trouble. Trump's aggregate overall approval rating is hovering right around 31-32%. Aggregate median across all polls. So he's in deep, deep doo-doo. The policies over ICE are at a similar rate. So that's very problematic for them. So what do? The second thing is that they push back by showing their might that is, all filled with hot air and nothing else. And they're doubling down on the cruelty, everything from taking things out of their way, which would be immigration judges and immigration attorneys that are available in the system, taking them out of the system, and then defying court orders. You're seeing it here in Illinois and the like, right? So they're just tripling down all over the place. I also see this as a good sign. I might add to our viewers in our panel is that when they're getting this desperate, it tells me something. It tells me that, in fact, they are out of tricks up their sleeve. Now, what is the real curative measure here? It is not just abolish ICE. So all of those great candidates that said that, God bless you. But there are 17 agencies in the Department of Homeland Services, DHS. And so you have to not just break down and redo ICE entirely, but CBP. FEMA's in there. There are another 14 other sub-agencies that are affected. TSA is in there always. So when you say abolish ICE, that is like one tiny piece of a very big puzzle that is antiquated. DHS was created right after 9/11 and was done in a very slipshod, like, okay, let's get this sucker done and let's put all the cookies in the cookie jar. So we got to rethink the whole damn thing. But I agree with you. They're tripling down. But that also tells us that they're desperate and we can change this.
Well, I love that you said that, though, is that we need to revamp this whole thing. And there's multiple avenues of it, right? Anytime you have a reactionary policy, an administration that creates reaction policies, multiple agencies that have not been thought through, and there's lives at stake that are impacted, that may or may not violate the Constitution, and you push things through, then I mean, we're now, 9/11, at that time. I mean, so we're far out now. At this time, what we're seeing is that people have not gone in and revamped this the way that was needed to be revamped. And so now the flaws in those agencies, in those systems are being used for the wrong purposes. And that's what happened, right? And I know that both you and I met with candidate Abdul Sayed, who's running for Senate in Michigan. And one thing that he shared with me, which I think is very important to think about when we talk about immigration enforcement, is this is actually about blurring the line of what is permissible between military and ordinary citizens and ordinary people on the street and civilians. So it is really how far can you push by using paramilitary forces to push civil civil violations, right? So immigration is a civil violation. So they're normalizing this to use military for civil violations. So it's kind of like a normalizing the idea of using this kind of aggressive force, which is profoundly interesting from a Republican's perspective. And I think every Republican should think about this. The Second Amendment specifically is championed for situations like this.
Yeah.
Absolutely, the Second Amendment is championed for situations like this when the government is normalizing paramilitary force for civil violations. And so it puts the Republicans in a very interesting position because they need to analyze, as they say, the intent of the originating statements when the Constitution was created. And I think that that's what we have to really, really decide. Are we, as Republicans and Democrats, pro the Constitution or anti the Constitution? And that's the guiding document that we're supposed to be using. And if you're willing to give up your Second Amendment to allow paramilitary forces to come down on you for civil offenses, understand that that's what you're doing.
Well, Reed had to leave the conversation. Remember, he is 2 hours ahead of us over there or before us. It's 6 o'clock in the morning when he joins us over here every Sunday. But yeah, great conversation so far, and it's very important for us to really, really pay attention to these little nuances. Maria, I would love to get Abdul Sayed on the show. So if you bring him,
we can have that discussion. I mean, I think right now, from my understanding from his team, I think all of us are seeing this, that he is neck to neck. Michigan loves him.
46.
Good news there. Maria, you may have seen this too, is that right after you and I chatted with him at that event, he actually pulled ahead of Haley Stevens and McMorrow. And Haley Stevens dropped by like 10%. So now he's at like 24% or 25%, and then McMorrow's like at 21, and Haley's down in the teens. So like that's a really big deal. Michigan does love him. Oh my
Michigan loves him. Michigan loves him. And I think the policies, his biggest talent in communication, only in communication, is that he's able to consistently break the echo chamber on these policies and bring people in and explain it in this way. And I think that's what we need. You know, I mean, this is just the way he described paramilitary. It's like we are all in this together. And you can be a Republican, you can be a Democrat, you can be an independent, but let's move towards two things: deciding that we want to protect human dignity and that we want to protect the Constitution. It's not that those two things are not complicated. That's a great starting point, right?
Let's not forget that we are Americans first. All of these labels come way second, and anything that is good for the country, anybody who's good for the country, we need to support them. And Abdul is actually a medical doctor, okay, trying to get into public service to help the country out. We need people like that. We need people who are committed. We need people who are educated. We need people who are not paying obeisance to one person. And we need people who are for the country, who believe in the Constitution. We've got about...
Mohammed, we also need people who can address and engage foreign dignitaries with PhDs.
Yep.
You know?
Yes.
Yep. That is what I was referring to earlier. I mean, we send 3 people who have a transactional background to sit across the table from 3 people who have a policy background and who have PhDs in their respective subjects.
And who probably excel in game theory, by the way.
Right. Like, talk circles around that all has been so like on a very, abstract level, because you have to make it abstract, because it's very frightening that they send 2 real estate dudes that are, just they're transaction makers or market makers, instead of people that have policy and skills in negotiation. What we all should have learned through this whole process is that Trump is the worst negotiator I have ever seen in my life. Having negotiated in public service, politics, and business and in nonprofits, I've never, ever in any of those worlds seen a worse negotiator than Trump is. He gives away everything and then doesn't know what to do and flounders and blusters and makes a fool out of himself. And he's humiliated this country. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. Folks,
insane.
you've been tuned in to the Lightning Strike. We come every Sunday morning from 8 to 10 on WCPT, Chicago's progressive talk radio station. We got about a minute to finish off the show. Please go and visit our website, tlsradio.com. And now we have a revamped website where you can actually subscribe to the show and support the show. Marie, thank you so much for your support. Every dollar counts. And we want to make sure that we keep the show afloat and continue this conversation. It's very important. It's very important that we have independent media, and we don't have too many shows like what we are trying to do over here. We're trying to keep corporate advertising out, because then they will start telling us what to talk about, and I don't want that to happen. So please go to tlsradio.com, visit our website, visit our YouTube channel also. We've got about over 200 shows posted on our YouTube channel. And it is at TLS Radio. We also have Brennan, you're still there with us? Okay, Brennan may have left, but we got our Apple
I'm
podcast.
still here. Sorry.
Okay, Brennan, sorry, we got about 30 seconds to finish. You want to talk about our Apple podcast and Spotify with things?
Oh, yes, please. Yes, we are now on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Please go check us out. You can subscribe to the show. Please remember to subscribe to the show and like the show. It's completely free, and you'll get updates when we post new episodes.
Absolutely. And we do have a Substack also going, so you can go to TLS host on Substack, and that's what it is. Thank you all so much for listening. Please tune in next week. We got another very important episode coming up, and let's take our country back.
The preceding program, The Lightning Strike, was sponsored by Mohammed Fahim, and to the extent applicable, their guests. The views and opinions expressed therein do not necessarily reflect those of Heartland Signal, LLC, or its management.
Dive deeper into